In this video, I'll be introducing you to Vlookups and Hlookups, explaining why they are used and giving you basic tips on how to work with them effectively. The main reason for using Vlookups or Hlookups is to easily retrieve information in a large dataset by looking up a specific value. Vlookup stands for vertical lookup. It is a function that you use to look up a value in a specific column and return a value in a different column in the same row. Hlookup stands for horizontal lookup and is used to look up a value in a specific row and return a value in a different row in the same column. Therefore, depending how the data is structured will depend on which of these functions you will use. An easy way to think about this is, if your data has column headers, you should use a VLOOKUP. If your data has row headers, you will need to use a HLOOKUP. I'll start by going through the basics of the VLOOKUP function. One of the biggest limitations and things you should be aware of with the VLOOKUP function is it can only look right. Therefore, using an example dataset here, where the data has column headers, you must ensure that the value you are looking up is on the left-hand side, and the values you want to retrieve are on the right-hand side. So in this data, if we wanted to retrieve an address or email by looking up a name, that would be fine, as the value we are looking up is on the left-hand side. However, if we wanted to retrieve an address by looking up an email, we would not be able to do this using the VLOOKUP function, as the lookup value is on the right-hand side. Let's jump right into an example of a VLOOKUP now, as that is usually the best way to learn. Let's say you want to try and retrieve the address and email records by looking up the name. The orange highlighted cell is the lookup value, and the bolded cells are the data we are retrieving via the lookup function. As an example, let's enter Frank Michaels in the B10 cell as the lookup value. Let's then go to cell B11, and here we want to retrieve the address by looking up the name. So let's start by typing VLOOKUP and open parenthesis. A helper box should appear showing you exactly what you need to type in. So first we need to choose our lookup value. So that will be cell B10. And let's ensure it's an absolute reference around this so that it locks in place when we copy down. This is done by hitting F4 once. Next, we need to highlight the table array. The table array is the range of cells used within the VLOOKUP. So let's highlight cells A3 to C8 and we'll ensure an absolute reference again. The next thing we'll need to enter is the col index num. And in this case, since the address is the second column across from the lookup value, we will need to enter 2 here. The range lookup is the fourth argument and determines whether we are looking for an exact match or an approximate match. By entering false or 0, we will look for an exact match, or by entering true or 1, we will look for an approximate match. I'll go into the different matching modes a bit later, but to keep things simple, in most instances you will be looking for an exact match, so enter 0 or false here. Great. Now you can see the address is correctly pulling through the address of Frank Michaels. Next, we'll do the same for email. I'll quickly copy the formula we use for address to save time. And the only argument we'll need to change is the col index num. This is because the email is the third column across from the lookup value. So let's enter 3 here. And as you can see, we are able to easily retrieve the email addresses. Changing the name inputs to something else in the list will then update the address and the email information like so. Let's now look at Hlookups. As you can see here, the same data has been arranged so the headers are in the rows. Next, let's enter Frank Michaels in cell B22 as the lookup value. Like before, let's then go to cell B23 and retrieve the address. So let's start by typing Hlookup and open parenthesis. A helper box again appears showing exactly what you need to type in. We'll select cell B22 as the lookup value, again ensuring it's an absolute reference by hitting F4. Next, we need to highlight the table array. So let's highlight cells A18 to F20 and again hit F4. As this is a HLOOKUP, we will need to enter the row index num. Since the address is in the second row down from the lookup value, we will enter 2 here. For the range lookup, we will again use an exact match, so enter 0 or false here. And now you can see the address is correctly pulling through the address of Frank Michaels. We'll again repeat this for email, but we will change the row index num to 3 as the email is in the third row. And again, changing the name inputs will work exactly like the VLOOKUP and update the address and email information like so. I wanted to go a bit deeper into the matching modes. So this is the difference between doing an exact match, entering 1 or true in the range lookup argument, or an approximate match, entering 0 or false. I'll start with explaining the exact match, as this is the most common one you will likely use, and the ones we have used in previous examples. All these VLOOKUPs are using an exact match. An exact VLOOKUP match will only return a value if the value you are looking up is in the leftmost column of the table array. However, there are some caveats. If you have a spelling error or the value does not exist in the table, you will get an error. So let's write a name that doesn't exist. As you can see, you get an error message. If the value exists multiple times, the lookup will return the first match it finds. So for example, we have James as a first name twice here in row 33 and 36. The VLOOKUP will only retrieve the values of the first James it finds in the list, which is in row 33. The VLOOKUP is not case sensitive, so it doesn't matter if the value is in caps or lowercase. It will still show as a match. This, however, can cause issues, especially if you wanted to do a case-sensitive lookup. There are ways around this though. Here, we have used a combination of the index and match functions to do a case-sensitive lookup. I'll provide a separate video taking you through this in more detail, but you can see we get an error message when we type the name in all caps locks or lowercase. Next, let's go over the approximate match, as this is less frequently used, but it can be really useful in the right situations. Here is a great example of when it's useful. Say we have a list of discounts that we want to apply that is dependent on the order value. The more you order, the more discount that is applied, and each discount is tiered. We can use the approximate match to quickly work out the discount rate. Below this table, we have a list of customers and their order values. What we want to do is enter a VLOOKUP to pull in the discount codes based on their order values. So if an order value is less than $25,000, it has 0% discount. If an order value is less than $50,000 but equal to or more than $25,000, it has a 2% discount. If an order value is less than $75,000 but equal to or more than $50,000, it has a 4% discount, and so on. This is the perfect scenario where you want to use approximate matches instead of an exact match. So now let's look at the VLOOKUP formula. As we can see, the lookup value is the order value. The table refers to the order table with the discount rates, and we are trying to retrieve the correct discount rate. The main difference is we have a 1 as the range lookup to signify an approximate match. You could also put true here as well. You will now notice that the discount rates are determined by the order value. If we change this one to 60,000, discount will change to 4%, like so. Tip: the key thing you need to remember when using an approximate match is you need to ensure the values in the table are in ascending order. In our example, the order values are going down in ascending order. If they aren't, you'll either get errors or incorrect figures being displayed. You can now see how approximate matches can be a very powerful tool, especially if you needed to populate the rates for a large dataset.